Hi, I'm Eric Brooks with Alpine Electronics, and in this video we're going to detail the installation of our subwoofer upgrade solution for the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y. The vehicle we're going to work on today is a 2020 Model 3 Tesla. So we're going to go through the entire process of the installation. I'll talk a little bit about what comes in the box so you have an idea of what you're going to be dealing with. But we're also going to go through the install. I'll show you in detail everything that we need for the car, as well as some of the different things you'll see in different model years of the Model 3, as well as the Model Y. So we'll give you all those details that you need to complete this installation. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started on our install, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes and talk about what comes in the kit, right? So you have an idea of what we're connecting in the vehicle and a little bit of how it works and how it connects together. The first thing you're going to want to make sure you do is confirm compatibility with your vehicle. So this system is designed, the first series of systems is designed to work with the premium audio systems in the Model 3 and Model Y. So if you have the factory system with the 8-inch subwoofer, this is designed to replace and improve the sound in your vehicle. Make sure to check out our website, alpine-usa.com, to confirm compatibility with your car based on the model year and all that stuff, so you know you're getting the right kit for your vehicle. But let's go ahead and talk about the product. So number one, if you have the factory 8-inch woofer, this is the 10-inch that's going to replace that. So it's going to give you deeper bass, cleaner bass, and more output than that factory sub. So you're really going to increase the experience for listening in your vehicle using the subwoofer. We're going to drive the subwoofer using our KTA-200M amplifier. This is a 200 watt mono amplifier that actually has a technology that gives us double the power output and burst. So this amplifier can produce up to 400 watts of output, really driving this 10-inch, making it sound great. Again, giving great deep bass and much better output than the factory system. So that's our amplifier that's going to run the system. From there, we're going to talk about the line level converter. So what this device does is it takes the information coming from the factory system and it converts it to a usable input for our amplifier. Now, your vehicle, if you have the premium system, has a factory subwoofer control. So that will still work just like before. So your EQ on your radio, your subwoofer level control on your radio is going to work just like you're used to. You're just going to have better bass and more output because of it. So this line level converter allows us to tie into that and use that signal. All right, so let's talk about the connections that we're going to do in the car. So number one, we're going to have a power and ground harness. So this is going to connect under the back seat in the car. So there's a power point there. I'm going to show you how to do that. And this is going to run from under the back seat into the trunk where the amplifier is mounted. We also have a power harness for our line level converter. So this again is going to connect under the back seat and run back to the trunk where our line level converter is mounted. We have our input harness. So this connects to the factory subwoofer output line from the factory amplifier, and it goes into our line level converter. So now we can use that signal and convert it to a usable signal for our amplifier. We also have our output wire. So this is going to connect to our amplifier, right, and go into the subwoofer. So that's going to close the loop and make everything work properly. So those are all the connections that are done in the car. It's very, very easy to do. Also in the box, you'll find some mounting tape for the amplifier so it can go in the proper location. You'll also find some zip ties so you can tie your harness up nice and neat and give it a good looking installation in the vehicle behind all the panels. You won't see anything in the vehicle. It's all going to be hidden away and look like factory, but man, is it going to sound great. Okay, so let's go over some of the tools that we're going to need for this installation in the 2020 Model 3 behind me. Very limited tools needed here. Very easy installation, but let's go through them. So number one, we're going to have a Phillips bit. We're going to have a 10mm deep socket. We're going to have a 13mm deep socket. And because of the fact that everything is easily accessible in this car, we can actually use our drill to access all of the bolts, right? So really easy to get to, so we can use that. You may find in the vehicle that you're doing, you may need a ratchet, but for our application, we're gonna use this drill. We also have some Tessa tape here, so we're gonna wrap up our final connections, making sure everything's safe. We have some cutters to cut off the excess of our zip ties, so we can make sure our installation is nice and clean. You'll need a flathead screw bit tip and a T15 Torx. This is for installing the fuse into the fuse holder, so you can go ahead and do that before you start the install or after, either way, but those are the tools you're going to need for that. But the most used tool in this install is going to be a panel puller. So this is going to be used to remove the plastic clips in the car so that we can take all that apart. The other thing I want to talk to you about is sound deadening. There are many manufacturers out there of sound deadening material that make kits specifically for the Model 3 and the Model Y. I would highly recommend that you use that in your installation to prevent any rattling or resonance created from the major output increase that you're going to get from this new subwoofer system. So to make sure that you have the best sound, you want to hear the sub, not the rattles that are created in the car, right? So get one of those sound deadening kits and make sure that you install that as well. Most of these things are a peel and stick applications, so you peel the backing off, you put it right in place, they're all pre-cut and ready to go in your vehicle. So check those out and get one that works for you. So with that, we're gonna go ahead, get in the car, we're gonna start the shutdown process and then begin our install. Before we start actually doing our install, we want to shut down the car and disconnect all the power so that we can work on it safely. The thing I've learned is that you want to be prepared for this installation, right? When you shut down the battery, when you disconnect the battery, shut off the computer, you're not going to be able to roll up any windows or down any windows or anything like that. So what we want to do is we want to open all the doors, we want to roll down all the windows. If you have a Model Y or a vehicle that has a powered back seat latch, you want to go ahead and fold down your back seat because once you disconnect the battery, you can't do that. So let's think ahead about that just a little bit, right? So I've got the windows open, I've got the doors open, and now we're going to go ahead and shut down the computer. If you shut down the computer and then you open a door, the computer is going to come back on. So you don't want to touch any buttons after you shut down the computer. You're going to shut it down, then we're going to go disconnect the batteries. Okay, so let's start with that process. We're going to hit the car icon on the screen. We're going to go down to safety. We're going to scroll all the way down, and then you'll see power off. So we hit power off, and now the computer is shut down. So now we can go and disconnect the front battery. So let's start that process. So this Model 3 and the Model Y are just a little bit different. So I'm going to talk about the differences here real quick. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pop off this panel here, right? So you're going to do that on this or on the Model Y. There's another panel. So you'll snap these off. Okay, on the Model Y, there are two 10mm bolts on the edge of the air cleaner piece. So you'll take those two 10mm bolts out and then you can pull that panel out of there. You'll just grab the front tub a little bit and you can get that out of there. Make sure to be careful for your washer reservoir cap, but you can get that panel right out and then you'll see the battery on the Model Y right there. This Model 3 again is a little different, a little easier. So the Model 3, we're basically just going to grab a hold of this panel and snap it off. Just a few snaps here on the back of this and that's it. So we've got the panel out. We're going to grab our drill with our 10mm socket on the end of it. So we're just going to go here, loosen that up, pop that terminal off. So there's our ground. Then we're going to go to the positive side, pop off this plastic piece here. That's off. 10mm right here. Take off our terminal. Boom, that's off. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this plastic piece and I'm going to isolate the terminal from the battery there. So I'm just going to set that under there to raise up our terminal, isolate it all, and there we go. So now we're going to go under the back seat. I'm going to show you how to take the back seat out and how to disconnect the high voltage plug and the battery there. So let's go ahead and get started that. To take the back seat out of this Model 3, there are a couple of tabs on the bottom edge of the seat. The Model Y and some of the other vehicles, you just grab the front edge, pull it up, and the seat comes right out. But this one has two clips. So I'm going to reach across the side here, find the clip, it's right there, and pull up. So that side's released. Now this side's released, so I can just take the seat and just move it forward and try to get it out of our way, right? Now under the seat on the passenger side, you're going to see this little styrofoam cover. You're going to pull that off, and then you're going to see a positive and a negative connection there for the 12-volt system. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up this red cap, off, and this is going to give me access to the bolt that holds down the positive, and then the negative's right next to it. So I'm going to take my 13mm socket on my drill and just loosen that up. I'll just set it on the floor here. I'll go ahead and do the ground. Put it on the floor here. We actually don't have to remove the wire from that because we're disconnected at the front battery, but we want those disconnected so that we can put our power and ground wire on there later. And then we're going to take this high voltage plug out, and then you'll hear the car kind of click and all the power is disabled from the vehicle now. So we are safe to work on this vehicle. So we've got our connections here ready to get our power wire later in the install, and we're fully disconnected from power. So let's go ahead and get to the next step of pulling out some of these panels. In preparation for running our power and ground wire through this, we've got this disconnected. We're going to take off the side of the seat here and this panel along the edge of the vehicle. There's a similar panel on the Model Y that you'll need to remove, and then when you remove the side panel for the trunk, that covers this area in the Model Y. So this has a seat there. The Model Y has a fabric cover here. So you may need to pop down your seat to get to this. In the Model Y, if you have the motorized mechanism, you should have already done that before we powered down the car. But I'm going to try to do it without removing that. So let me go ahead. This just snaps in and then lifts up, right? So I'm gonna pull on it. Probably need to pull down the seat a little bit. So I'll pull down the seat, pop it out, lift up. And there you go. So that's the side of the seat. Comes out really, really easy. I'm going to flip up the seat so you can see this next part, this panel here. We're just going to grab a hold of it and unsnap it. Just that easy. So that's that panel there. So we're going to set that out of the vehicle. Now we have a huge channel to run our cable through. We'll tie up the fuse holder here later on in the install and connect it all right there. But I'm going to flip down the seat so we can get to the panels in the trunk, and let's move to the back. So on the back of this Model 3, we're going to remove most of the floor trunk panels. We're going to remove this back cover panel, the panel under the dash here, the rear deck, basically to get access behind this panel. Ultimately, this panel is going to come off. That's where the factory subwoofer is, as well as the factory amplifier. So we need to get back behind here. Most of the things that hold this together are just snaps, so you just grab and pull. But there are a couple of plugs that you need to remove, so I'll use the panel puller to pull those out, and then I'll show you how they work because it's kind of hard to see from that angle. So first off, we're just going to take out this back trunk lid. So we'll put that on the floor. We're going to grab a hold of this panel here. It just snaps, so we're just going to grab it and we're going to pull up on it. And it's held under the rubber, so you'll notice that the rubber pulls up, and you just snap that off. Just a few snaps along the back of that. So we'll set that right there. Then the tub. So under the tub, this tub just basically sits in here, right? There's a little bit of Velcro type material that holds it down on the sides, but it basically just comes right out of here. Now on the Model Y, you'll find a few extra clips that I'm going to show you here in a second that you'll need to remove. But again, for the most part, it's all just snaps and pull and whatnot. There is a plastic panel here that kind of tucks under the side panel. So we'll want to get that out. And you just kind of pull on it and it'll remove right out of here. So again, this is this plastic piece. So we'll set that aside. So there's a pop right here. You need to just grab a hold of the center pin with your panel tool. It just pops right out, and then you can grab a hold of it. And you just release a little pressure from the inside, and then if you grab it, it'll come right out of here. So this is the first of 3 or 4 in the back here. So that's out. We'll put that in the tub. Now this is all loose. Then we're going to take out the front portion of the trunk floor. And again, this is all basically adhesive that holds this down. It's like a double stick or a Velcro kind of adhesive that holds this panel down. Underneath the back seat area, the back side of the seats, there's some hooks that you'll need to release for this to pull out. I've already released those, so now we're just going to pull it out of the back. So let me set my panel puller aside. I'm just going to grab, there's some foam under here and then the carpet, and it just Velcros in and pull it out. So it'll all come out in one piece. Again, it just Velcros down And that's out. Now the next panel that we're going to remove is this under the rear deck panel here. So there's snaps all along the sides or the front of it here. So this just snaps down, but there are two of those plugs, just like the one we took out here. There's two of those plugs in each far corner way up under the deck. So we're going to have to kind of get in the trunk upside down to pull those out. So we're going to use our panel tooler and just get in there and unplug those. They hold the corner of this plastic panel as well as the carpet on the side panels. So that's what those plugs hold in. So once we pull this down, we'll be almost home. So I'm just gonna get under here. I can see them from this angle just fine. You just gotta get your panel puller in. There it goes, that unsnapped. There it goes, there's one. The second one is right over here. That released. And I found that it's easiest if you kind of hold your fingers on the center of that plug itself and then just pull on the plastic piece. It helps that thing to release. So there's the second one. So those are both out. Now we're just going to grab a hold of this panel and pull it down. It's just that easy. So now that piece is out. Now we have one more plug at the very front of the trunk. So again, we're going to use our panel puller. We're going to try to grab a hold of that. Get that center point there, pop it up. Pull it out. And then that's the last one of those. So with that, it looks like we're ready to pull down this cover panel. So this is just going to come down here and you can see a plug. There's a light. This is an interior light here and it's got a plug on it. So there's just a small plug with a push pin. You release it, pull your plug out. That's now disconnected and we can pull out this panel. So we're going to go around this way and there is one more plug right in the front of the trunk there. You'll see it right on the very corner of the carpet. So you'll release this from inside the car and that's that. So now the carpet is all loose and we can pull this out of there. Now that we have full access to the subwoofer and the amplifier, this is when we'll go ahead and start taking all this apart. Some of these amps are held in by maybe a Torx, a Phillips, or definitely a 10mm in all of the cases, but some of the extra screws are a Phillips or a Torx. In the Model 3, the amplifier actually has a bracket with a connection to the factory sub. On the Model Y, the amplifier is mounted to the car and not to the sub. So you'll still need to loosen the amplifier, get it out of the way so that you can pull the sub out. It's just not mounted to the factory sub like this one is. So I've got my Phillips tip on my screw gun. I'm going to get this screw out of here. All right, so that screw's out. Now I'm going to change over to a 10mm, and there's a 10mm bolt on this bracket here, and I'll show you exactly where in a second. And you can see that the amplifier is now loose. So the amplifier is loose. There's plenty of slack on the wires, so we can pull that all the way out of the way. You want to make sure when you put the amplifier back in, you make sure that this ground wire is connected, okay? Because the computer is going to be looking for this ground. So before you do all of your connections for the battery, you want to make sure that's reconnected. So we're just going to put it in just like it came out. All right, so from there, we're going to go ahead and start taking out the subwoofer. So again, 10mm bolts. There are 3 bolts that hold this sub in. There's one at the very top back. That's a bolt. So we're going to get that. There's a nut right here on the lower portion. And then there's another nut way back in the corner over here. So I'll get that out and show you where it mounts on the subwoofer. And now our subwoofer is loose. Before I pull the sub out, there's a speaker plug right here. This is the connection to the factory amplifier. I'm just going to push down on that tab and unplug that. So that's our connection. This is actually going to be the plug that we access to go into our line level converter. So we're going to use that plug in our install. But let's go ahead and get the subwoofer out of here. So it comes out nice and easy. You got to work around the taillight a little bit, taillight assembly, but it comes right out nice and easy. So here's your factory sub. You can see a huge difference between this and that 10-inch that we're putting in. So we're going to have a lot better bass once we get that new tin in. So this is the point in the install when you're actually going to want to go ahead and do your sound deadening. So if you bought your sound deadening material, you're going to want to put that into this side of the vehicle here to help with any rattling in the car. So I'm going to add a little sound deadening in here myself, and then we'll come back in a minute and show you how to finish up this install. So we've got our sound deadening done here. So now we're going to start with the process of installing the hardware for our system and making the connections. The thing I'm going to start off with is our input to our line level converter. So you'll notice that there's plenty of cable for this installation. And the reason for that is whether you have a Model 3 or a Model Y, you have plenty of room to put this product wherever you choose in your application. So we're going to go ahead and plug this in to this factory subwoofer input wire. So this is the plug we took out of the factory sub, and we're going to plug it into this harness, right? So that's plugged in there. Now that connection is done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the KTA-200M where it needs to go, because that's going to dictate where we're going to mount the line level converter. So I'm going to just rest the amplifier here, and then we have some mounting tape. So let me grab the mounting tape real quick and the KTA-200M. So here's our KTA-200M. We're going to actually adhere this amplifier right onto the factory amp right there. So I'm just going to set this aside for 1 second. I'm going to take our adhesive, so that's going to go on the factory amp, and then we're going to put a piece right on the back of our KTA-200M. And then put that on the KTA-200M. Now, this adhesive has been vibration tested in our facilities, so we know that it's going to be properly mounted. So we're not going to have an issue with vibration or anything like that with this thing coming off. So it has been tested and approved. We're going to go ahead and take our harness for our KTA-200M. We're going to plug it in here. So this harness comes in the box with the KTA-200M. We're going to plug it in. It's going to click, and then we're going to know it's good to go. Then we're going to just set the amplifier right here on top of the factory amp, right? So now that's mounted. Now I'm going to go ahead and rest this down below so that I can finish up all of our wiring. I'm next going to grab our power harness. I'm going to connect the power harness to the KTA-200M in preparation for running it to the front of the vehicle. So here's our power harness here. I'm just going to take the end that goes toward the front. You'll know that by the ring terminals and the fuse holder. So this end goes toward the front of the vehicle. So we're going to place that up out of the way right there. And these ends connect to the yellow and the black wire on the harness for the KTA-200M. So there's an Allen key here. I'm going to grab that. And then the yellow wire goes to the red wire. So I'm just going to grab our yellow. I'm going to put it into the red. You need to loosen up the screw first. That always helps. So loosen that up just a little bit. Slide our yellow wire in, and then tighten it down. And this makes for a solid connection. So the yellow wire is now connected and tight. We're now going to do the black wire. So loosen it up again just a little bit. I like to twist my wires a little bit, make a little more solid connection with that screw. Hold it in there and screw it down. Okay, now that's tight. Okay, so now our power and ground is connected on our KTA-200M. I'm going to take just a couple of pieces of tape here just to cover up that connection to make sure it's all good and safe. So just a couple of small pieces of tape. I just want to cover those screw holes just to make sure everything's properly covered and safe. So, all right, so that's all taped up and ready to go. Now that we have the power connections done for the KTA-200M, we're going to go ahead and connect our line level converter. So we have a plug here that has the power ground, and remote trigger for the amplifier. And this again has plenty of wire here so that you can be flexible in where you mount the line level converter. But the plug that it goes into, you'll see on the line level converter itself, you'll see ground, plus 12V, and then in and out for remote. That's this plug. So you want to plug that in right here. It only plugs in one way, and you're good to go. So that's our power side of the plug. Then we're going to go ahead and take that plug that we plugged into the factory subwoofer input out of the factory amplifier, and we're going to plug that into the other side. So this is our input into the line level converter. All right, so now we have this all connected. This long run here can go to towards the front of the car. This is going to run with our other power and ground for the amplifier. And then we can tell where we're going to put the line level converter in the install. Now on the KTA-200M, there's a pigtail for RCA input. So this is a red and white RCA input, and there's a pigtail on the amplifier itself. So for this install, I'm going to keep the line level converter within the length of this pigtail. Now we put an extra RCA in the box, so if it needs to be mounted remotely, you can do that. But for this install, I'm going to try to keep it close. So I'm going to plug in the white and the red RCA connector here, and then I'm going to determine on this harness where I can tie it. So it looks like I can tie it just a little ways away from the factory amplifier. So I'm going to take a couple of zip ties. I'm going to go through the mounting points on the line level converter and zip tie this in. All right, there's one. And now we'll get the second one in. And there you go. So now our line level converter is mounted to that harness. Our KTA-200M is Velcroed onto the factory amplifier itself within the distance of that pigtail for the RCA. So now I'm going to just take a pair of snips and I'm going to cut off the excess zip tie to make our install nice and clean. That's that. Next, what I'm going to do is, because we have some excess cord for this input, I'm just going to tie this up nice and neat too. So I'm just going to roll this up a little bit, just so we don't have loose wires hanging all over the place. And I'm actually going to tie it to this other big harness down here, just so it's out of the way. So another zip tie. All right, so now that's all tight. Now, you'll see one other wire that needs to be connected. This is our remote trigger wire. So this line level converter has input sensing. So it knows when the factor radio turns on and off. And this will turn our KTA-200M on and off accordingly. So we're going to need to connect this blue wire to the blue wire that's on the KTA-200M. So let me get this up so you can see it. So you can see it here. There's an actual plug on the wire for the KTA-200M. A bullet connector, so this will actually plug directly into this other connection. So we're just going to take and push that connector in there. And that's it. So now that's connected. I'm also going to take just a little bit of tape to cover up these connections so they're nice and safe. Just a couple of small pieces is all you need. A couple of reasons for this. Number one, I want to keep it safe from being able to make any ground contact, and it'll just help ensure that that plug stays in. But it is a tight connection there. And then I'm just going to tie up this other loose end here, and this is a nice piece that's on this harness. It allows, if you're going to do additional amps in the future, to daisy chain your remote trigger, right? So that's that. So that's all tied up nice and neat now too. Now what we can do is connect our speaker harness. So now we're going to take the outputs out of the KTA-200M. That's these brown wires right here. And we're going to connect those to the input wire of our new subwoofer. All right, so let me grab that and then we'll make that connection. So there are two connectors here that need to be crimped. So I'm going to grab my crimpers. We're going to line the brown wire up to the brown wire. And there's also a brown with black that's going to go to black. So brown to brown, we're going to do that one first. We put that into the connector, and then we crimp that connection. Okay. And then again, brown with black goes to black. So we'll get that one ready. And make our connections. So now that's done. So now what we can do is we can take a couple of zip ties and we can kind of tighten this harness up just to make sure it's nice and clean going from the amplifier to the line level converter, right? So we'll just take one zip tie and we'll wrap it right around here so that everything, there's no pressure on the wires and everything is secured. So just tighten that up, cut off the excess, and we're good to go. So now the amplifier's all connected, everything's ready to go there. I'm going to leave this down in the well of the trunk, and we're ready to put in our subwoofer. So let's get started on that process. With all the connections made, we're ready to go ahead and mount our subwoofer in. So we're going to mount the subwoofer back in here, mount the amplifier to the subwoofer and back to the factory mounting points, and then we're going to run our power cables up to the front. So let me grab the sub and we'll get that in here. So the subwoofer is going to go in the exact reverse that the factory came out. So there are the 3 mounting points. We just want to make sure to get this thing in here. I'm at a little bit of an interesting angle, but that's okay. I want you to be able to see what's going on. Work around. Boom, there we go. We are in place. So now remember what we had when we took it out. We have 2 10mm nuts and a bolt up top. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in and we'll start mounting this thing up. So there's a nut for this one. Here's the bolt for up top. Okay, and then we have this 10mm nut that's all the way up top in the back. So I'm just going to reach my hand in there and get it started. All right, now with those started, I'm going to grab my drill. And we are good to go. So now our subwoofer is nice and tight, and that's ready to go. Now we're going to take our amplifier and we're going to put it back up in its spot. So let's grab the amp. We're going to swing it around. Actually flip almost all the way over. We're going to be careful not to touch our subwoofer with that mounting bracket. And we're going to slide this into position here. So make sure all the harnesses are out of the way. And there we go. So there's this 1 10mm mounting point on the factory bracket that's right here. Remember, this holds our ground. So we're going to take our bolt right here, put it through the ground. We're going to drop it into the hole, which is no big deal because I have plenty of room to grab it. So let me find that 10mm bolt. There it is. We've gone fishing and we found one. So we're going to go ahead and put this bracket up. We're going to use the 10mm bolt, go through the ground, because remember, very important that you have that ground wire connected. Then we're going to go through the bracket and into the factory mounting point. So we'll get it started by hand, get it into place, and then tighten it down. Now, something to note. You may get a subwoofer that has an allocation for that factory bolt that holds the amplifier to the factory subwoofer enclosure. You may have an allocation for that where you can just use that factory bolt and screw it into the mounting point on the aftermarket subwoofer. If the allocation isn't there, that's okay. There's a supplied screw. You screw that right in. It's a self-tapper. You screw that right into this enclosure, and that creates a new mounting point for the amplifier. So I'm going to do that now. This subwoofer did not have the allocation. No problem. I have a screw and we're going to fix it right now. So let me change out my tip. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my Phillips bit, grab my screw, and I'm just going to go here and in the enclosure. There we go. All right, so now we're tight there. So now we have the amplifier bracket all mounted back up into our new subwoofer. This is our subwoofer input, so we're going to take this. This comes out of the KTA-200M. We're going to hide it away in this pocket down here and then connect it to the new subwoofer right here. So this is going to just plug right in. That's good to go. We're going to tuck it below the sub here, just down into this deep well. Everything's tucked away nice and neat. And then when this carpet panel goes back on, it's going to cover everything here. So from this point, we're going to take these power harnesses, we're going to run them to the front of the car, and then make our final connections under the back seat. Then we're ready to power everything back up, listen to it, test it, make sure it works, and then put the car back together. So I'm going to start running those power wires that way. I'm going to run it along this harness that's at the top of this shock tower. So I'm just going to pull these wires up here, take a zip tie, run it right around here, and make it tight. So I've got one there. I'm going to take one here. At the bottom of the enclosure, there's another mounting hole that we can actually take and tie wrap, zip tie our power harnesses down here so they don't move around on us. So we'll go ahead and zip tie here. All right, so now everything is tight. So when this panel goes on, it's going to cover all this, and we're good to go. Let's go ahead and move to the front. Okay, so we've ran our wires down along this factory harness, we've zip tied them up, and we're ready to make our final connections to the power point underneath this back seat. So we have two grounds. We have the one for the amplifier and the one for the line level converter. We also have two power wires, one for the amplifier and one for the line level converter. So we can go ahead and connect these here. Basically what we're going to do is just put those on their respective points. So I'm going to do the power first. We take our 13 millimeter, we put it back on the stud there. We'll just get it started by hand, make sure it's threading up nice and neat. We'll grab our drill. Okay, so that's our power side. We'll put the cover back on that. Now we're going to go ahead and do our grounds. So here's our ground wire for our amplifier and our ground wire for our line level converter. So we'll get that lined up. Put our 13 millimeter nut back on there, get it started by hand. Okay. Okay, so now that's all connected. Now, what we can do is we can go ahead and start the process of powering back up the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure this cap is on all the way. There it is. Boom, boom, boom. So this is our plug for our high voltage battery system. So we're going to start the process by plugging this back in. Then we're going to go back up to the front and we're going to connect our 12 volt power source there. So we'll clip this in. You might hear some connectivity happening when we put this in. So I'm going to go ahead and snap that in. Okay, now we're going to go to the front and reconnect that front battery. To reconnect the battery, we're just going to reverse the process that we did to take it apart. So I'm going to remove this red cover so we can put the positive terminal back on. So we're going to put that on. We're going to take our 10 millimeter, tighten it up. Okay, we'll put the red cover over the battery terminal. It just snaps in place. Okay, then we're going to take our ground and we're going to go ahead and connect that. So that's going to connect. Now you're going to start hearing things happening in the vehicle. It's coming back to life. We're going to go ahead and tighten that up. So that's ready to go. Then we're going to take our panel. We're going to put it in place. And there's just a few snaps that have to happen here. So get it lined up. There it goes. Once it lines up, it goes right where it needs to be. So that's all connected. Now I'm going to show you the wake up procedure for the inside of the vehicle. Let's head that way. So this car actually rebooted on its own, so we didn't have to do the reboot process. If your car doesn't reboot, the process is you push and hold the two scroll buttons on the steering wheel. You push them in and you hold them for 5 to 10 seconds until the Tesla logo comes up on the screen. Once that Tesla logo comes up, you can let go. The car will then do its reboot process and you'll be ready to rock and roll. At this point, you're ready to test your sound system. So we're going to go ahead and get a source playing. We're going to turn up the volume and make sure everything is playing good. So let's go ahead and try that now. So this thing has amazing bass, so much better than the factory system. It plays so much deeper and really so much louder. So it's like a whole different sound system, even though all we changed was the subwoofer. So man, it is totally impressive. So we've reconnected the front battery, we've tested the sound system, it sounds awesome. So now it's time to start putting the car back together. So we're going to start here at the back seat area and get all this back together. So I've gone ahead and put in, put in place the back carpet panel that goes on the side, because we have this one clip here in the top corner that needs to be put in before we can put the seat and this bottom panel back in. So first up, we're going to take that bottom panel that just snapped right out of there. So we're going to put this back in. We're going to line it up. And then once this snaps down, we're just going to take the rubber and pull it back over the lip of this plastic piece. So you'll see how it goes in. And it goes in just the exact opposite of the way it came out. So you'll pull that rubber piece back so it makes a nice seal, and it looks like no one's even been in this area of the vehicle. So now that that rubber molding's covering that, we're going to take the back side of the seat. Remember, this clips down and then in, so we're going to see these hooks on the back side of this piece. There's hooks here, and then clips in here and here. So we're just going to pull the seat belt out, get it behind the seat belt, and then down and in. Boy, that goes in nice and snug. So that's all set. Now we can fold up the back seat, and then we put in the bottom. So what we're going to do to put in the bottom, we're just going to slide this into place. We need to get our seat belts in alignment, so they just kind of stick up. There's one seat belt on the Model 3 that actually sticks through this hole and then lays down into a groove. So we'll get that lined up and then start to work our seat into place. Then once we get the seat into the right spot, we just need to push it down. So we push it in and down and it locks in. Now we'll do the driver's side. Just come across, in, and down, and there we go. Now it's all locked into place, seat belts are all set, and we're good. Now moving on to the trunk. Time for the finishing touches. We're going to go ahead and reverse our process of taking the trunk apart. The rest of the car's back together. This is the last step. So just remember the process. We have a few plugs to put back in here. We're going to put all these panels back together. So we're going to start with this side panel. There is this light plug, so you need to remember to get that. The light plug right here that plugs in. So that plugs in. We line everything up. There's one plug that goes in the very front here, so I'm going to reach forward and put that in. That's there. There's one plug that goes right here on the back side of this panel. So we're going to get that lined up and put that in. So there you go, right there. Okay. There's this support piece for the tub. This goes in here, so we're just going to tuck this under the carpet, and it rests on this frame rail. So we'll get that in there. It snaps right into place. So there's that. Now it's time for the front piece of the trunk. Slide this piece in. This goes up behind the back seat. So we'll just push this into place. You're going to want to slide it down behind the back seat. You may have to go to the back seat side of it just to get it in. I'm going to go do that now. It tucks between this metal piece and the trunk and the back seat. But once you get it in the groove, it should fall right into place. Like so. All right, so that's in. Now we're going to put our tub in. So this just, again, reverses the process. The tub goes in. Very nice, very easy. Okay, now, here's a little bit of the fun part. You take this rubber grommet, this rubber seal for the door, and you have to run your finger along to tuck this side panel in. So it sits under this rubber seal. The seal helps to hold it in place. All right, so we've got that in place. Okay, now this goes under that rear deck. So we're going to take this, we're going to get the snaps to line up. It's again going to go under this rear seal. So you work to get it lined up. I'm actually working it into the seal before I snap it in. If I can, there we go. Once you get it in the right spot, it just kind of falls into place. You may have to work your finger along the edge, but that's it. All right, so that's up nice and tight now. Now, remember, we had those two plugs that go in here. So we're going to take those plugs and we're going to put them in place. So one goes up in this very top corner here, and one goes up in the very top corner there. Sometimes they like to fight you just a little bit, but if you keep your patience, you can get it in every time. Now, last piece right here on the trunk back. Take this piece, line it up with our trunk latch, and there's just a few clips along this. And again, you're going to need to work your way around with this rubber seal. So you're going to need to pop the rubber seal up to get it to allow it to go down far enough to get your snaps in. Once you get it started, you can kind of roll with it. If you have a panel puller on hand, sometimes that helps. We're almost there. We're almost to the finish line. All right, we're clipped in. Now for the last piece, the trunk floor. So this goes in to cover that well in the back, and we are done. So now, we've just taken the time and installed this incredible subwoofer solution for this Tesla Model 3. If you have a Model 3 or a Model Y, you too can have this sound system upgrade for your vehicle. We went from that factory 8-inch driver to this new 10-inch high-performance woofer with a mono amplifier driving it, and we use all the same controls in the factory radio, so you don't have to learn a new interface, but you can enjoy plenty of great subwoofer output for a long time. It's a great system building tool, so you can add on to the system as time goes. Maybe you want to change out your speakers in your car. We have solutions for that too. But here you go. You're ready to rock and roll in your Tesla Model 3 or your Model Y. For more information on all the Alpine products, make sure to check out our website at alpine-usa.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again soon.